Cuban authorities and the emergency services continue working for the fourth consecutive day to extinguish the fire at the supertanker base in the western province of Matanzas. Workers and social organizations in Venezuela mobilized to reject the sanctions imposed against the country and the freezing of the nation's goods and assets abroad. At least 3 Palestinians were killed in Nablus, including a senior commander of a Martyrs Brigade, and over 50 people were wounded. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Cuban authorities and emergency services continue working for the fourth consecutive day to extinguish the fire at the supertanker base in the western province of Matanzas. Authorities said the smoke, low visibility, and the force of the wind have prevented them from spreading foam and other chemicals in the area, making it difficult to extinguish the flames. Given the complex situation, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel called to keep working in unity and to willing to overcome this adversity. The fire set off by a lightning strike on Friday, August 5th, killed 1 firefighter, left 14 people missing and 100 injured who are receiving medical attention in hospitals in Matanzas and Havana. On Tuesday, Public Health Director of the province of Matanzas, Cuba, Luis Armando Won, offered the morning press conference to report the latest figures of hospitalized patients due to the oil tank fire blast. According to Dr. Won, as of 10 a.m. on August 9th, 125 people had been treated, of whom 19 remain hospitalized and 106 patients were discharged. Won assured that all the outpatients are receiving medical care as part of the recovery. The doctor also stressed there is no rise in respiratory issues resulting from the blaze smoke. However, he recommended the population to use face masks and to avoid standing under the rain, possibly carrying toxic substances from the gases of the explosion. Also, Won said the firefighting personnel at the explosion site is receiving proper medical care. And Cuba keeps receiving help from fraternal nations in the region as the island struggles to extinguish the blaze at the supertanker's oil depot in Matanzas. On Tuesday, Mexican Navy multi-purpose vessel Belle 02 arrived in Matanzas Bay with a helicopter to support the firefighting. This same ship brought, a few months ago, humanitarian aid to Cuba in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, the Mexican vessel Bourbon Arbace, specialized against fires, entered the Bay of Matanzas. The Bourbon Arbace is an offshore supply ship that was built 12 years ago and sails under the Mexican flag. After the second tank exploded, Cuban authorities requested international help, being Venezuela and Mexico's firefighting delegations the first ones to arrive in the island. We move on to other topics. Brazil's former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, leads the voting intentions for the presidential elections to be held in October. According to a survey commissioned by BTG Bank and produced by FSB Communication Company, the former president remains as the first voting option with 41% of support. The poll also showed that President Jair Bolsonaro remains in second place with 34%. The poll also revealed that the distance between the two candidates narrowed by at least 6 percentage points. Since its last July's survey, Lula da Silva had 44% support, while the current head of state has polled with 31%. Gas workers in Uruguay face on Monday a lawsuit from Biogas company for having participated in union actions. After a few weeks of conflict, the company imposed sanctions on the workers in May, so the union carried out a series of measures to try to get these employer actions lifted. 75 gas union workers were summoned to court to testify this month, a fact that was described as a new case of union persecution. This process has been denounced by different actors of the civil society, and they pointed out as a process against those who exercise the legitimate right to social protest. Now we address other topics. In South Korea, the heaviest rain in 80 years have left 7 dead and 6 missing in Seoul and surrounding regions, as well as flooding for vehicles, homes, and subway stations. Several areas in South Seoul, the port city of Incheon, and Gyeonggi, the provinces which surrounds the capital, received rainfall of more than 100 millimeters per hour overnight on Monday in what was the heaviest downpour since 1942. In response to the situation, President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered the evacuation of residents from high-risk areas and encouraged companies to allow employees to work flexible schedules on Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, North Korea has issued a heavy rain warning for the southern of the country as torrential rainfall has hit Pyongyang and other areas. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Workers and social organizations in Venezuela mobilized to reject sanctions imposed against the country and the freezing on the nation's goods and assets abroad. Members of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela marched on Tuesday under the slogan, "Great March for Our National Assets." Protesters began their march from Plaza Morelos in Caracas and moved towards the headquarters of the National Assembly. The Confederation of Workers of Venezuela also participated in the mobilization, demanding that the gold in London and the Conviasa plane hijacked in Argentina be returned to the Bolivarian nation. In this context, President Nicolás Maduro Moros announced that along with social movements in Argentina, they will launch a major campaign to recover the country's assets. In Argentina, workers, unions, and other social organizations demonstrated on Monday rejecting the theft of Venezuelan assets in national territory. The National Territorial Federation members, as well as representatives of Argentine Workers' Central Union, condemned the steal by the U.S. of a plane bound to Conviasa, Venezuela's state-owned flag airline. Also, they rejected the unfair detention of the aircraft crew in Argentina and demanded the transparent process in the case. Coming from Mexico, the Boeing 474 have been detained in Argentine territory since June, after it was denied fuel supplies under a U.S. order. The president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, held a meeting with leaders of guarantor countries of the country's peace process, with the aim of resuming dialogues with the National Liberation Army. During the first day as head of state, Petro met with the president of Chile, Gabriel Boric, who ratified his commitment for Chile to remain as one of the guarantor countries of the peace process. The purpose is to revive the protocols that were agreed upon and thus start this new stage that seeks total peace in Colombia. In this sense, Gustavo Petro ratified the Republic of Cuba as the venue for the talks, a desire that he expressed to Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, given that the peace delegation of the insurgent group is currently in the island.
In concrete terms, what we have is a desire to continue the processes initiated during the Santos government and enrich them. First, by complying with those that were signed, the processes with the FARC. Secondly, by continuing those that were interrupted. One with the ELN very early on, which did not even manage to sit down in a legal negotiation.
Taiwan's military began a live-fire artillery drill on Tuesday, simulating the defense of the island against an attack. Liu Weiye, spokesperson for Taiwan's 80 Army Corps, confirmed that the drills had started in the southern country of Pingtung, with the firing of target flares and artillery. The drills, taking place between Tuesday and Thursday, will include the deployment of hundreds of troops and about 40 howitzers. Taiwan's army said the drills were already scheduled and were not being held in response to China's exercises. In the U.S., the FBI searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property as part of an investigation into whether he took classified records from the White House to his Florida residence, sources told to the local Times and the local news media. On Monday night, images were released of the raid of the tycoon's home, who had earlier reported the raid as an act of bad faith by the prosecution. However, so far there is no official confirmation of the raid by the Justice Department or the national investigation agencies. The events occurred when the Republican leader's intended presidential candidacy is being sought to be annulled due to the attack on the Capitol and the alleged attempts to annul the results of the 2020 elections. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, will sign on Tuesday the protocols for the adhesion to NATO of Finland and Sweden, which will abandon their policy of neutrality in the wake of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. As reported by the White House Press Service, the applications of both Nordic countries to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization have already been ratified by the United States Senate. On June 29th, NATO leaders meeting at a summit in Madrid formally invited Finland and Sweden to join the Atlantic Alliance after the two countries reached an agreement with Turkey, which had previously blocked the start of talks of joining the military bloc. Hundreds of people gathered in New York, United States, to show their support for the Palestinian people victims of the Israeli bombings in the Gaza Strip. The call took place at Grand Central Terminal in New York City on Monday evening, August 8, 2022. Those gathered expressed their repudiation of the Israeli airstrike on Friday that killed dozens of Palestinian civilians and expressed their support for the people of the Arab country. This attack in Gaza has killed at least 45 Palestinians, but the people of Palestine stand firm in the face of such monstrous crimes, and we close the quote, said Laila Boutros, coordinator of Samidun, New York, in the framework of the demonstration. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. At least 3 Palestinians were killed Tuesday in Nablus, including a senior commander of the Al-Aqsa Brigade, and over 50 people were wounded. The army incursion comes 2 days after the end of a deadly Israeli military operation against the Palestinian armed movement Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip, in which 46 Palestinians were killed. Clashes with the Israeli army were also reported in other parts of Nablus, where Palestinians threw stones at the soldiers. In the old city, there was an exchange of fire between Palestinians and the Israeli security forces. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said its medics treated 69 people for gunshot wounds in the Nablus area, at least 4 of them in critical condition. On Tuesday, thousands of Iranians rallied in Tehran in support of Palestinian people under Israel's bombing. As other nations in the region, Iran rejects latest Israel's bombing on Palestinian people that left 46 Palestinians, 6 of them children, and wounded 360 according to Gaza's health ministry. On Friday, Israel launched what it called a preemptive aerial and artillery bombardment of Islamic Jihad positions in the Gaza Strip. On Tuesday, the Palestinian health ministry said 3 people were killed and dozens wounded as Israeli forces raided the occupied West Bank city of Nablus. The Israeli military said a senior militant commander was among the dead. Polling stations opened in Kenya on Tuesday for voters to cast their ballot for the 6 elective posts, including the president. The 2 main contestants in this presidential election are Raila Odinga and William Ruto. According to the country's electoral body, about 22 million people have registered to vote, and the polls opened at 6 a.m. local time and will remain so until 5 p.m. Analysts have stated the race is close, with neither of the leading candidates polling significantly higher than the other. If no candidate wins more than 50% of the vote, the election will go into a runoff for the first time in the history of the African nation. This is the third general election to be held under the 2010 Kenyan constitution.
Voting is important for the betterment of my life because we need to vote out non-performing leaders. We need to replace them with better leaders. We have high hopes for Raila Odinga's victory, as he will help tertiary workers like myself. I am 52 years old and I have high hopes for his victory.
Libya began trying more than 50 men accused of being members of the Islamic State group. They are accused of being members of the terrorist organization and of carrying out killings. An attorney for the defendants and their families said the objective of the hearings is to provide evidence against each accused so that the trial is fair and not subject to an appeal. In 2014, the Islamic State took advantage of the chaos that followed the killing of Muammar Gaddafi to establish itself in Libya. Although the group was defeated in the North African nation, some experts have expressed concern that it will reappear in the country's south, where its members have staged deadly ambushes against security forces.
The accusation against them is a class action. The first charge is joining a terrorist organization banned in Libya.
The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Gaza, and several members have expressed concern about a fragile ceasefire between Israel and the Islamic Jihad following 3 days of Israeli airstrikes on Palestinian territory. The meeting was called in the wake of Israeli attacks that have left at least 45 Palestinians killed, including 15 or 16 children. A ceasefire brokered by Egypt is currently in effect and came into effect on Sunday night. However, both sides have reserved the right to break the delicate truce. In this situation, Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Tor Wensland, pointed to Israel's disrespect for UN resolutions as the cause of the escalation of tensions.
Approximately 1,100 rockets and mortars were fired by Palestinian armed groups, mainly PID's Al-Quds brigades. Some 20% of these reportedly fell short within Gaza Strip, causing damage and, in at least 3 cases, potentially large number of civilian casualties.
For his part, the representative of Palestine to the Security Council, Riyad Mansour, asked the audience of how much more the Palestinian people must suffer before the United Nations intervenes.
To say enough is enough. As the highest authority responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security, how many more years does it get to impose its inhumane blockade on 2 million people, half of them children, until someone says enough is enough? How many more children do we have to bury until someone says enough is enough?
Hundreds of thousands of Shiite Muslims on Tuesday marked the festival of Ashura in Iraq's holy city of Karbala, the burial place of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. Ashura is a 10-day period commemorating the 7th century killing of Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Imam Hussein, in the Battle of Karbala in modern-day Iraq. To mourn his death in the year 680, Shiite worshippers wearing a black cry and beat their chests in unison. Shiites represent more than 10% of the world's 1.8 billion Muslims, and Ashura is marked by millions of people from Afghanistan and Pakistan to Iran and Lebanon. TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now, more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.